Here's a story where love, passion, and trust transform into the bitterness of betrayal and pain. The protagonist believed he had found his soulmate in Emma. They shared dreams, built plans, and enjoyed a happy, harmonious life. But sudden changes, business trips, new acquaintances, unexplained distance, gradually turned his life into a thriller of jealousy, manipulation, and calculated revenge. This is a tale of shattered illusions and what a person is capable of when they've been betrayed. Emma and I first crossed paths at a cozy event at a church. From the start, there was a rare, easy understanding between us, as if we'd stumbled upon something special. Our shared interests, beach walks, movies, sports, running, volleyball, and lively parties, were immediately clear, and friends often joked that we were the perfect match. Our relationship began just as spontaneously as it remained memorable, during a tennis tournament. Initially, Emma was supposed to play with my friend Samuel, but when he suddenly canceled, he suggested we play together. He called and said, "I can't make it. Why don't the two of you play together?" Emma and I agreed, and we quickly practiced a few serves and plays before the tournament started. On the court, she was incredible. With my height and powerful serve, we made a strong team. By a stroke of luck, we won the tournament, and to celebrate, we joined the other players at a local bar, savoring the moment of triumph. The evening unfolded with Emma's flirtatious glances that I couldn't look away from. Her beauty and confidence were captivating. As the night came to an end, she invited me to her place. We kicked off our shoes and settled onto the couch. "What a day," she sighed, beaming with happiness. "It truly was something special," I replied, feeling a strange excitement. When Samuel couldn't come, I never imagined the day would turn out like this. At first, I was just struck by her beauty, but I hadn't expected us to connect so deeply. She laughed softly and said, "Well, look where it led us." "You were amazing on the court," I said. "Honestly, I thought you were adorable from the start." I blushed a bit as I said it. Everything about that evening felt surreal, and before I realized it, I confessed, "I really like you." I leaned over and kissed her forehead. She laughed. "I didn't think the day would end like this." "Neither did I admitted, still not quite believing what was happening. "To be honest, you were so impressive on the court that I had to work to stay focused. You're not just beautiful, you're incredibly talented." She leaned in closer, her gaze fixed on me, her hand lightly touching my thigh. "And how does that make you feel?" she whispered. My breath quickened. "It throws me off a bit and makes me feel warm," I replied, feeling every one of her touches. "And now?" she teased as her hand moved a bit higher, stirring my excitement. Words faded as she leaned in even closer, her gaze never breaking. "I'm beginning to think less about the game and more about you," she whispered. I joked, "I have a few talents beyond tennis." With a playful smile, she responded, "Right now, that's all I need." And our kiss deepened, leaving me breathless. When I pulled back, there was a sparkle in her eyes, drawing me closer. "What's with that smile?" she teased. "You're amazing. From that smile to those adorable freckles," I confessed sincerely. A tender look came over her face, and a single tear slipped down her cheek as she leaned in to kiss me again, her hands gently touching me. "I want to know how many feelings I can awaken in you," she whispered, leading me to her bedroom. Clothes were soon left behind, and we shared a moment of incredible closeness, merging into one. She held me close and whispered, "I love the way you feel, Owen." And in that moment, we both understood that this was something extraordinary. Half a year passed, and our lives became inseparable. The next step was natural. We chose an elegant venue for the wedding, and a year later we exchanged vows, promising to share life completely. Our physical connection was undeniable, though I sometimes had to work to keep up with her boundless energy. Soon after, we bought a home, a charming old house in a beautiful neighborhood. Within weeks, we left our mark on every corner of the house, even under the stars in the backyard. Emma joked that it was our full love tour. Friends and family constantly said we looked like the perfect couple, a comment we heard so often it became routine. Professionally, things were going well for both of us. Emma excelled in tech sales, and I found my niche in software development. Outside of work, we stayed active. I was into mountain biking and photography, and Emma loved cooking, pop culture, and working out. Every part of our shared life felt like destiny, a chain of shared moments and memories that only strengthened our bond. She eagerly participated in every pop culture quiz, and I always admired her knowledge, especially when she showcased it in the kitchen. To our friends and family, it was obvious that we were a perfect match. Even our political views aligned completely, which, at a time when conservative values weren't popular, felt like a rare find. During every election season, we discussed candidates and issues, almost always in full agreement. And if a rare disagreement arose, it was quickly resolved even in front of friends. They would just smile and shake their heads, saying, "Yes, you two are made for each other." We were also respected in our careers, and from time to time my programming skills came in handy for her work. I remember one night hearing her frustrated sigh from the home office as she wrestled with new software. Curiosity got the best of me, and I offered to help. After she explained the problem, I quickly found a solution that not only sped up her work, but also improved the software for her entire team. She was so grateful and expressed it in her own special way. Financially, we also set our goals. We carefully planned our savings for trips, buying a larger home, and updating our cars. When Emma received a significant bonus, we reassessed our investments, often putting money into real estate and gradually building a portfolio. By the 9th year of our marriage, we owned 3 houses and an apartment. I took on managing the renovations and tenant maintenance, overseeing the installation of smart locks, security systems, and repairs for the irrigation systems. By our 11th anniversary, I was busy with our rental properties over the weekends, while Emma was fully immersed in her work. One Saturday, I was preparing to fix the irrigation system in one of our houses. Gathering my tools in the garage, I heard her voice. "Owen, darling, before you go deal with the pipes, I need a little help in the bedroom." Already halfway to the car, I called back, "What's leaking in there?" Her answer was playful. "There are no pipes in our bedroom ceiling," she teased. "Maybe you should come take a look?" Dropping my tools, I headed upstairs, and when I opened the door, I froze. Emma was lying on the bed, adorned with nothing but a small vibrating accessory and a couple of playful touches. My jaw dropped. "Oh, Owen," she purred, breathing heavily. "I think you'll need to stay here for a while." I realized I had been holding my breath. Dropping my keys, I joined her without hesitation. Fixing the pipes could wait. She captivated me completely, and by the time we finished, I felt as if I had tackled an entirely different task that required focus, precision, and a fair amount of skill. That day was filled with deep connection. We were completely absorbed in each other. Over time, we discussed starting a family. With several properties and substantial savings, I was ready to take this step, but she wanted to reach a few more career milestones. Recently, Emma received a significant promotion, an important event for her, and I understood her desire for financial security before this new stage in life. On our 12th anniversary, friends and family threw us a perfect couple celebration, where we enjoyed cornhole and wrapped up with a 4-day wine tour in a limousine. When we returned home, we could hardly wait to reach the door before we started taking off our clothes. The house became our playground again, as we moved from the staircase to the living room and back to the bedroom. Life seemed wonderful. Shortly after that, Emma received another promotion, which we celebrated in a stylish downtown restaurant and continued the celebration at home. Around then, she met Luke Jackson, a new director at her office. Luke was tall, attractive, and known for his stylish appearance and charm. The women in the office admired his confidence and easy smile, and Luke noticed Emma. Although her company discouraged relationships between different level executives, Emma and Luke held equal positions, which technically made their friendship permissible. Their CEO, Olivia, a divorced mother of two, often organized work events where Luke's magnetic personality drew much attention. Watching Emma closely, Luke seemed to believe that every marriage has its cracks and thought Emma might be interested in a little adventure. They began having lunch together occasionally, discussing work matters, with Luke carefully preparing for each conversation. Luke knew Emma well, her professional activities, favorite restaurants, hobbies, and preferred dishes. He skillfully guided their conversations to support her, acknowledge her strengths, and boost her self-confidence. Recently, their company shifted focus toward potential clients in a neighboring region, a territory Emma was responsible for. Luke often invited her there to discuss strategic plans, always highlighting her ideas. From dinners in upscale restaurants to memorable strolls, Luke made their time together engaging, and Emma began to genuinely enjoy their meetings. Soon, her energy and attention were deeply invested in their joint projects. At home, I noticed subtle changes in her, something faint but unmistakably distant. Our physical closeness dwindled, and she seemed lost in thoughts that felt miles away. When I asked about it, she often blamed it on work stress, which only widened the gap between us. In an attempt to restore closeness, she planned an anniversary surprise, a trip to Paris, a place I had always dreamed of visiting. She told me about it in May, and we spent a cozy day planning the itinerary, looking at landmarks, and dreaming of a journey together. It brought a refreshing spark to our relationship. However, just a few weeks later, her company announced a mandatory leadership retreat in July. One evening at dinner, she reluctantly said, "Owen, I have good news and bad news. Which should I start with?" Bracing myself, I told her to go ahead. She took a deep breath and said, "I decided we should postpone the trip and put that money into savings. And since I'll already be in Chicago for the retreat, we can turn it into a little getaway." I was stunned, sitting there trying to process what she was saying. "Wait, aren't you supposed to be working in Chicago in July?" I asked, somewhat confused. "Yes," she replied, "but since the company is covering the hotel, we'll save quite a bit. Chicago has great beaches, excellent restaurants, and maybe we can even play some tennis." She looked enthusiastic, but I couldn't shake my doubts. "But if it's a work trip, will we actually have time to spend quality time together? When will we be on the beach or playing tennis?" "Don't worry," she reassured me. "Work sessions end at noon, and we'll have the entire evenings and weekends to ourselves." She smiled, and that usually put my mind at ease. I get that saving money is important, and I'm sure Chicago will be wonderful, but I just don't see why we had to cancel Paris. I was really looking forward to a week just for us. Besides, we already have a decent amount saved. By then, she'd already canceled the tickets, leaving me little choice but to go along with her plan. Determined to make the most of it, I reserved a table at a fine restaurant and even looked up local tennis events, hoping Chicago would still be a memorable getaway. But shortly before the retreat, Emma had another work trip. She was more reserved this time, mentioning only late meetings and dinners with clients when I asked. I tried not to worry, attributing it to her demanding job. When we arrived in Chicago, I had to admit, the place was beautiful. We checked in on Sunday, spent the day at the beach, and even played a bit of tennis before dinner. That evening, Emma's company hosted a welcome event, and she invited me, mentioning that her boss, Olivia, approved. At the dinner, I noticed Emma spending a lot of time talking to her colleague, Luke, which left me somewhat unsettled. When I gently suggested that she might spend more time with me or that we might consider leaving, she brushed it off, reminding me, "We're here for the work retreat." Trying not to spoil the evening, I stayed at the table where Olivia, her CEO, struck up a conversation with me. As the evening progressed, Olivia's friendliness began to feel overly personal. She laughed a bit too loudly and even ran her finger down my arm, making me uncomfortable. Trying to stay respectful, I excused myself and left for the restroom. When I returned, Olivia looked a bit embarrassed, and I maintained a polite distance for the rest of the evening. Later, I convinced Emma to stay for one more drink at the bar, just the two of us, but soon enough, Luke joined us, cutting off any chance for a private moment. Eventually, we returned to our room, but by then, Emma was too tired for any intimacy, and I felt lonelier than ever. Over time, Emma's shortened work hours gradually grew longer. She stayed late into the evening, leaving me alone most of the day. Many of her evenings were taken up by private corporate meetings where I'd wait for her in hotel hallways, hoping for even a little time together. I tried to fill the void, spending time on the beach, joining volleyball games, even bumping into a few familiar faces, but none of it mattered. In truth, I just wanted Emma by my side. The distance between us was palpable, and Olivia, still resentful of my recent refusal, took every opportunity to remind me about my worker bee in comparison to executives like Luke, always with a tinge of sarcasm. By the end of the week, I felt like we had barely spent any time together. Even with the weekend, we had only been close a couple of times. It was far from what I expected for our anniversary. But when we returned home, Emma was full of renewed enthusiasm about her job. Life quickly fell back into its usual rhythm, except now, she traveled for work even more frequently. Every time I asked about it, she'd give me the same answer: meetings and dinners with clients. In mid-September, I brought it up again. Emma, I don't recall your company focusing so much on business trips. Has something changed? You're right, Owen. It wasn't a priority before, but now we're expanding rapidly there, she explained. When several clients are in one area, it allows us to handle multiple issues in one trip. And why are you involved in sales? I continued, surprised. Olivia believes having someone from the post-sales department involved in the sales process increases our chances of closing deals, and it's actually working, she said. It's part of our annual strategy, and things should get easier after that. I hoped her workload would decrease and maybe we could return to how things used to be. Lately, we had been more like roommates, and our intimacy had dwindled to just a few times a month. One Friday, I planned a special evening, grilled steaks and her favorite wine. When she came home, I looked forward to a cozy evening together. She hugged me, gave a quick kiss, and poured herself another glass. Thank you, Owen, she said, raising her glass. I tried to smile. Feels like a special evening. I'm just glad you're home for the whole week so we can relax a bit, I said hopefully. She smiled, a bit forced. This break won't last long, unfortunately. I have to leave again tomorrow night. Disappointment washed over me. I thought you'd be here all week. Sorry, Owen, she replied, and there was finality in her tone. I quietly cleared the dishes, feeling the evening slipping out of my control. She watched me from her chair, sipping her wine. Later, while loading the washing machine, I asked if she needed anything else done before her departure. No, everything's fine, Owen. You just got back. I know hotel laundry is expensive. Does the company cover those costs? No, she answered calmly. I do my laundry at Luke's apartment. It was like a thunderbolt out of a clear sky, and I froze. What? You've been staying with him on recent trips? I asked, stunned. Her expression remained calm, almost detached. It's not about saving money, Owen. Listen, something needs to change. I'm nearly 40, and I realized I want things I used to deny myself. This path doesn't lead me where I want to go. When I'm with Luke, I see a life I want to live. She spoke with an unsettling calm, as if she were discussing the weather. He takes me to shows, exhibitions, fine dining. He's sophisticated, confident, the man I feel like a queen beside. And with all due respect to you, you're just not like that. Her words hit like a blow, and I struggled to process what I was hearing. Emma, we had plans. We talked about a future together, about family. She met my gaze with a sense of finality. Owen, I don't think I'm ready for children. My life isn't suited to that kind of commitment. I stood there, feeling a hollow emptiness spread within me. Emma, have you been with him? Why? I demanded, barely holding back my disappointment. Because I make my own decisions. she replied coldly, her voice sharp. I'll be with whomever I choose. Whether it's Luke or someone else, it's my business alone. This is madness, I argued, a hint of desperation in my voice. You used to say you loved me. Maybe I was mistaken, Owen, she replied without a trace of emotion. Looking back, I don't think I ever truly loved you. It's time to move on, and I've decided to file for divorce. And please, stop calling me baby. It's not fitting for someone who's no longer your wife. Her words struck me, leaving an emptiness and uncertainty inside. I wondered if I had done something to drive her away or if I simply hadn't been good enough for her. So, you're choosing him over me because he's better? I asked, barely restraining the pain. Yes, something like that, she replied, her tone still icy. We just aren't right for each other, Owen. And your new friends in the executive circle support this too? I asked, stunned by her detachment. I'm surprised you didn't notice it yourself, she said, as if it were obvious. Fine. And tonight? Where do you plan to stay? I asked, trying to keep calm. You can use the guest room, she replied curtly. All right, I muttered, defeated, as I walked down the hallway. The next morning, after she left, I began searching for a divorce lawyer. I met with Evelyn, a sharp and attentive woman who patiently listened to my story. She explained what to expect from the process, and soon we started the exhausting task of dividing assets and accounts. I called friends and family to explain the situation, which sparked an angry call from Emma. Are you out of your mind? She shouted over the phone. Who gave you permission to tell everyone about the divorce? You did, Emma, I replied, trying to stay calm. When? She demanded. The moment you said you wanted a divorce and preferred to be with that guy you're off and away with, I reminded her. I thought we'd keep it private, maybe mention it during family gatherings, not make it public knowledge, she hissed angrily. And I certainly didn't ask you to present it like that. What exactly did I say that was wrong? I asked, genuinely puzzled. Reading from a message her sister had shared with her, Emma quoted, Regrettably, I must inform you that Emma has chosen to break her marriage vows for a new relationship with a colleague who captivated her. We will no longer attend events as a couple, and we ask that you respect our decision as we close this chapter of our lives peacefully. What was wrong with that, Emma? I asked firmly. You made me look like a naive fool who was swept away by some charming executive. It's humiliating. Emma, you wanted a divorce, and frankly, even if I still felt the way I did last week, I wouldn't want to stay married to someone who blatantly betrayed me, I replied, feeling an odd sense of relief as I finally expressed what I'd been holding inside. I already got tested for STDs and am awaiting results. I suggest you do the same, I added. If he's willing to be with you while you're married, who knows who else he's been with? With that, she abruptly hung up. Her reaction almost made me laugh, though it didn't ease the pain. That night, sleep was elusive as my thoughts played over and over through our shared memories, our trips, laughter, and the love we once shared. Lately, even food had lost its taste. Gradually, the legal process took over. The lawyers dug in, untangling our finances, dividing retirement funds, closing bank accounts, and canceling joint credit cards. I had no desire to hold on to a house filled with memories, so I left it to her. The apartment, being closer to the city, fit her new lifestyle better, so it stayed with me. The documents were finally completed, and every minor detail was settled. I had settled into a new apartment, just a couple of blocks from the condominium where we once lived together. Several months had passed since she announced that she needed a change, and now our conversations were rare, limited exclusively to necessary legal matters. Occasionally, I would see her at church or some events. Then, one Sunday, she introduced me to Luke, the man she had chosen over me. This is Luke, she said, smiling tensely. He extended his hand with a confident smile. I've heard a lot about you, Owen. I looked him in the eye but ignored the gesture. If only I had understood where things were headed back then. I glanced briefly at Emma, shook my head, and left. In the following months, I reevaluated our shared friendships, trying to discern whom I could rely on and who might pass information to her. I maintained light relationships with some friends, sometimes having a drink together or playing a game, but I kept my deeper feelings to myself. Fortunately, my colleagues supported me when they learned what was happening. One afternoon, my boss, Levi, called me into his office. "Owen," he began, "if you ever need to talk, don't hesitate. I can imagine how hard this must be for you, and sometimes just talking helps." I nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Levi." "It's been difficult," I admitted. Levi looked at me seriously. "If thoughts of revenge cross your mind, don't do anything you'll regret. That momentary satisfaction isn't worth years of consequences. I've seen where that can lead." I laughed at his candor. "Thanks, Levi. Seems you have some experience with this." He nodded slightly. "Let's just say I've learned a few things." I began to wonder what kind of revenge, if any, might fit my situation. Levi paused, then said, "Think of it like programming, Owen. Break everything down. What's your goal, what's off limits, and what's high risk?" "Nothing physical, of course," he continued. "But you can close this chapter in other ways, through finances, legal or social steps. Approach it creatively, like a project at work." I nodded, considering his perspective. "You've given me a lot to think about," I replied. Levi added, "Take as much time as you need." Deciding to follow his advice, I shifted from emotions to strategy. That same day, I organized a session in the conference room, getting permission to use an old whiteboard for brainstorming. I started jotting down possible strategies, categorizing them: social, financial, professional, self-respect, and legal. A few close colleagues joined, suggesting ideas, even jokingly adding physical and technical options to keep all possibilities open. Some ideas were reasonable, others absurd, but we held nothing back. At the end of the session, I took a photo of the board, stored it in a closet, and thanked Levi for his understanding, promising to hold future meetings only after hours. A few days later, while working out with a friend from church, he asked, "Are you playing in the tennis tournament next month?" "I hadn't planned to," I replied, knowing that my usual partner and I were no longer together. He looked at me with sympathy. "I get it, but you love it. Why not join in this time?" "Not this year," I said, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. "By the way," he added, "I saw that Emma signed up too, so I thought of you." "Yes," I confirmed. "And when's the registration deadline?" he asked, showing interest. "About a week before the tournament," I replied. That night, lying awake, I thought, perhaps this was exactly what I needed. The next morning, I added a new line to the strategy board in the office: sports achievements. It joined the first category of the plan. At lunchtime, I gathered my revenge team to review our strategy once again. We went over our previous plans, exchanged new ideas, and refined the old ones. Later that day, I met up with a college friend over drinks. I told him about the mess I was currently dealing with and asked for his perspective on it all. The next day, Ben, one of my most trusted allies in this vengeful endeavor, quietly closed the door as he entered my office. "Owen, how serious are you about this?" he asked, his voice tinged with clear concern. I looked at him, surprised. "What do you mean, Ben?" He paused before replying. "I know that a lot of what we discussed was just venting, but some of these ideas, if we go through with them, it could backfire, especially if we take it too far." I chuckled, waving off his worries. "Relax, Ben. We were just talking. I'm not actually going to take anyone out. Sure, I'd be glad if Luke just disappeared from my life, but I'm not about to cross any lines. And Emma? Not even close." Ben nodded, visibly relieved. "Glad to hear that. Still, if you ever consider reconciling with her, it might be best just to leave all of this behind." I shook my head. "No chance, Ben. There's no going back." "I want her to realize what she gave up," I said, my voice filled with bitterness and anger. She shattered my trust like it was nothing, and I want her to feel the weight of that. Ben listened quietly, then asked, "Where's this sudden clarity coming from?" I sighed, looking down. "Just processing everything, I guess. We might need Levi or someone with legal knowledge if things ever go sideways." "Understood," he replied. "Just keep me posted." The next few days were unpredictable. Some were easier than others. I poured my energy into training for the upcoming tournament, pushing myself harder with every session. I found a new competition partner, Abigail Martin, a fierce and resilient competitor with an impressive charisma. I wiped the last remnants of revenge plans from the board, finally letting go of the lingering urge for payback. My boss stopped mentioning my situation, and Ben kept his thoughts to himself. In the end, I realized this whole ordeal had been more of a mental cleansing. Finally, the tournament weekend arrived, bringing with it a lively, competitive atmosphere. Teams from neighboring states and local communities gathered for this major event. It was nothing like the calm Sunday matches Emma and I used to win over 13 years ago. This year, the tournament lasted all weekend, culminating in a big barbecue after the awards ceremony on Sunday. Emma and her partner Luke made it to the finals in the mixed doubles. Known for their aggressive playing style, they were ready to bring the heat. I felt just as prepared with my new partner, Danny, a tall, red-haired woman in her 30s with piercing green eyes and an athletic, muscular build. The crowd buzzed with anticipation, wondering if there would be any tension between Emma and me. I decided to skip the customary pre-game handshake, citing a sore hand. When the game began, Danny and I found our rhythm, always staying one step ahead of Emma and Luke. The crowd was captivated by how effortlessly Danny delivered powerful shots, constantly putting Emma and Luke in awkward positions. By the middle of the second set, I decided to change tactics, sending a few balls directly toward Luke. One shot seemed headed for an empty spot, but at the last moment, I redirected it, hitting Luke square in the face and drawing a little blood. The game paused briefly while he attended to his nose, and after that, I avoided targeting him directly. We finished the match confidently, taking the win. At the net, we lined up for handshakes. Emma extended her hand and said, "Didn't you say you had a sore hand?" "It's fine, ma'am," I said loudly enough for those nearby to hear. Then, leaning a little closer, I quietly added, "Welcome to the team of losers, Emma." She jerked her hand back sharply, fury flashing in her eyes as she struck out. I dodged easily, my reflexes honed from countless hours on the court. She quickly glanced around, checking to see if anyone had noticed, but everyone was too far to witness what happened. Anyone watching from a distance would likely think she was just fuming from the loss, maybe even a bit envious, storming off in frustration. Later, at the award ceremony, I learned that, for the first time, not only the champions' names, but also those of the runners-up, along with the final score, would be engraved on the eternal trophy. When Emma realized her name would be etched there, forever commemorating her defeat, her face darkened. At the post-ceremony barbecue, Samuel struck up a casual conversation with Danny. "You look familiar. Have we met before?" he asked, and she offered a polite smile. "I don't think so, but I get that a lot," she replied. I chimed in eagerly. "Danny and I go way back. We were friends in college, and she was the star of our volleyball team. People still recognize her now and then." "Ah, that makes sense," Samuel nodded with a smile. As the evening wound down, I offered to drive Danny home, and she invited me in for a drink. She changed into something comfortable, and we settled on her couch, sipping our nightcaps. After a brief pause, she looked at me, her green eyes warm, holding a tenderness I hadn't seen before. "Owen, this rematch has become something much bigger over the past few weeks. I've really enjoyed spending time with you," she whispered, leaning in for a gentle, lingering kiss. When we pulled away, I took a moment to marvel at her, the curve of her lips, how her freckles caught the soft light, the spark in her eyes. "Danny," I said quietly, I want to see where this goes, too. But honestly, I feel like I'm still working through my past. You deserve more than just being part of all that." She smiled softly, understanding. "I don't want to be anyone's shadow from the past, either," she replied. We agreed to plan a real date in a few weeks, giving ourselves time to clear our minds. After another tender kiss, I went home alone, feeling steadier than I had in a long time. My divorce was final, but Emma and I still moved in the same circles, attended the same church, shared mutual friends. At work, Ben once pulled me aside, asking how I was coping. "So, are you ready to retire the revenge board?" he joked with a grin. I paused, considering his question. "Honestly, Ben, I'm still struggling with it all. 12 years of trust, thrown away. It's like she discarded me as if I meant nothing." He looked at me with sympathy. "I'm working on a new idea. It's a bit different now, but let's take a look at the board first," he suggested. At noon, the team gathered in the conference room to discuss our revenge matrix. Before we began, I took a red marker and added a few new entries. In the physical pain column, I noted game incident, and in the social humiliation column, I added divorce announcement and public disgrace. "Red means this is already done," I announced. "So Ben, what's your plan?" He carefully laid out his idea, breaking it into two parts. I'd already discussed one aspect with Levi and was handling it myself, while the other part was my responsibility. We discussed the pros and cons, considering the potential impact. By the end of the meeting, I had a lot on my mind and felt uncertain about what lay ahead. Despite my efforts to move on, I soon heard that Emma was expecting a child and had moved in with Luke at his apartment. I avoided places where I might run into her, even skipping church. But one Sunday, fate intervened, and I ran into her in the parking lot. She noticed me with a smug smile, as if she had won something. "Aren't you going to congratulate me, Owen?" she asked, resting a hand on her stomach. I kept my composure. "Didn't you always claim your body was too perfect for pregnancy? Or was the offer just too tempting?" She rolled her eyes and shrugged. "Maybe he's fertile because, believe it or not, this wasn't planned." "How far along are you?" I asked, barely concealing my disdain. 7 months, she replied, her smirk only widening. "Could you at least wait for the ink to dry?" I spat with barely restrained contempt. She tossed her hair over her shoulder, deliberately indifferent. "Get over it, Owen. Admit it. You and your little friend are nothing but losers. Always have been." I let out a bitter laugh, dropping all pretense of politeness. "Enjoy your glamorous little getaway. Just don't forget to bring a sick bag." I turned to leave, hearing her mutter under her breath, "Goodbye, loser," as she climbed into her car without even glancing my way. And yet, I couldn't help but watch from a distance as her perfectly crafted life began to unravel. The company she'd boasted about, the job that always came before anything, even me, was now on the brink. Their prized software? It was built on stolen code, and the original developers were closing in, demanding every dollar earned be returned. Layoffs began, and those generous bonuses she took such pride in? Gone. Soon the company was in survival mode, desperately scrambling for an expensive license just to stay afloat. Budgets were slashed, morale plummeted, and her perfect partner, Luke, wanted nothing to do with the mess. With her pregnancy, he was growing more distant, rarely showing up to doctor's appointments, and showing even less interest in any future plans together. Instead of excitement, he felt trapped, realizing this life was far from the elite dream he'd envisioned. In the end, Luke made his choice. Emma came home to find him with a suitcase. "What's going on, Luke?" she asked, panic in her voice. He barely looked at her. "I'm leaving. Got a job far away." Her face went pale. "But the baby's due any day. When will you be back?" He shrugged, focusing on his suitcase. "I'm not coming back, Emma. Your insurance will cover the delivery." Her voice wavered. "And raising the baby. What about us?" He looked at her coldly with detachment. "Emma, I like my freedom. I love art shows, fine dining, luxurious trips, diapers, and sleepless nights. Not for me. She tried to hold back her tears. But I thought we loved each other. I thought the baby would bring us closer, she pleaded, her voice shaking. He just shrugged, turning away. Goodbye, Emma, he said, walking out, leaving her alone. Stunned, Emma collapsed onto the couch. But before she could fully grasp the shock, a sudden sharp pain hit, followed by a rush of fluid. Her water had broken. With trembling hands, she grabbed her phone and called Mila, her friend from work. Mila, I'm going into labor and Luke just left. I need help, she sobbed. Oh, Emma, I'm so sorry. I'm away with my sister, Mila replied apologetically. Try calling Avery or Camilla. They're closer. Mila hung up, and despair washed over Emma as she tried to reach Avery and Camilla. But there was no answer. She was completely alone. Desperate, she grabbed her hospital bag and got into her car, managing to drive only a few blocks before the contractions became unbearable. She pulled over, scrolling through her contacts until she saw my name. With a shaking hand, she dialed, praying I would answer. Owen? I picked up, surprised to see her number on my screen. Thank God, she rasped. Owen, please, I need help. Can you come? Her voice trembled with desperation. Emma, what's going on? Why are you calling me? I asked, puzzled by the panic in her voice. As I held the phone tightly in my hands, her voice came through, tense and filled with panic. Owen, it's happening. I'm in labor. I'm here, close to the apartments. Please, I need you. I can't do this alone. I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the irritation rising inside me. All right, I'll be there soon, I replied, ending the call. I quickly found her red car parked on the side of the road with its hazard lights flashing. Parking behind her, I walked up to her window. She lowered it. She looked exhausted and pale. Thank you for coming, she whispered, trying to catch her breath. Car trouble? I asked, noticing the baby bag hastily thrown on the passenger seat. It's not the car, she exhaled, wincing as another contraction shot through her body. My water broke. The baby is coming. She looked at me desperately. I need you to take me to the hospital. I looked around, trying to grasp the situation. Where's Luke? Her face twisted with pain and disappointment, and tears glistened in her eyes. He left. He flew away. I stared at her, stunned. Wait, you're in labor? And he just left? Call him. He has to come back. She shook her head, her voice trembling. He's not coming back. He said he doesn't want to be a father. I struggled to contain my anger, gathering myself. Give me the phone. She handed it over, and I quickly dialed emergency services. Yes, I'm with a woman in labor. Please send an ambulance immediately. I returned her phone, watching as another contraction doubled her over in pain. She looked at me, filled with fear. Owen, please, just take me to the hospital. I'd prefer not to risk my car, I said, glancing at the luxurious leather seats in her car. Nice car? Probably cost a lot. And that suit of yours doesn't look cheap either. She blinked, momentarily bewildered by my words. What are you talking about? Remember that software I developed for your company? I began, observing her reaction. Turns out the rights stayed with my company. So thanks to its use, your firm now owes us substantial licensing fees. While you celebrated 6-figure bonuses, I received a 7-figure check. Another contraction clouded my words, and I could see she barely comprehended what I was saying. A mix of emotions washed over me as I watched her in pain. Sympathy mingled with a sense of justice. The ambulance will be here soon, Emma, I said calmly. I have other plans for the evening, so I should get going. Owen, please, she begged, her voice quivering from the pain. Just stay with me until they arrive. And help with the car? I shook my head, keeping my composure. That should be your husband's job, or at least the father of your child. Owen! She screamed, trying to open the door as another contraction overwhelmed her. I paused for a moment, casting one last look in her direction. You and Luke? You're a perfect match, Emma. Then I turned, got into my car, started the engine, and drove away, leaving her to face the consequences of her choices alone. My friend, and this is the end of the story. If you liked this story, then put your royal like and subscribe to the channel. May the force be with you.